Hello, everybody. This is Sophia Mona Lisa from the Galactic Center. And I just want to thank you for joining me again this month to look at the creative energies that the cosmos has brought together for us for this new month of May 2023. What's really exciting is that there are two big cosmic events this month, and they're both within the first week of May. So I will speak to them individually, and then I will look at some of the other aspects that are happening this month that are, and from my perspective, blending and supporting those energies as we move through the month. So remember, every day there are cosmic aspects in the sky. They have their own unique steps of the cosmic dance and influences and connections with other events that have happened or will be happening. So I'm just really endeavoring to kind of bring in the focus a little bit, just to give us a taste of what this month of May is all about. So first of all, what we see here is right out the gate, May 1st, we have got what's called a Mercury Inferior Conjunction. And I'm going to explain to you what that Mercury Inferior Conjunction is all about. But I do want you to take note that it is happening on May 1st, typically known as May Day. And as an anecdotal piece of information, when I was in the second grade, I was voted to be the May Queen and got to ride in the May Day parade on the back of a convertible Corvette. Of course, that was back in the 60s. So when you're thinking of me on the back of a Corvette, think about those 60s styles Corvettes. They were pretty sleek. So anyhow, this Mercury Inferior Conjunction is happening at 12 degrees of Taurus, 20 minutes. And this is just another little tidbit that I'm going to slide in here right now to continue to educate you a little bit. As I mentioned in the previous video, for April, each degree has 60 minutes. And they're numbered 0 to 59. So if you remember your math rules back in elementary school about how do we round up a number. So generally speaking, in math, if the number is 5 or greater, you round up to the next number. If it's less than 5, you round down to the previous number. So for instance, 4.6 would be a 5, but 4.4 would be a 4 if you're rounding. Well, we have a similar kind of a rounding system in astrology. And because there's 60 minutes in a degree, then the rounding number that we look at is 30 minutes. 30 minutes and higher, we round up to the next degree. Less than 30 minutes, we round down to the previous degree. So you can look at this 12 degrees and 20 minutes, and you'll notice right away that if I were just going to be referring to this event in the sky, I could refer to it as 12 degrees Taurus because of the rounding down. Now, what is the Mercury Inferior Conjunction? I'm going to get a little bit more into some information around Mercury, but right now I want you to understand what the Mercury Inferior Conjunction means astrologically, and then we're going to get into the significance of it. So what it means is, if you look at the sky, you've got the horizon, and the luminary bodies that you can see in the sky are above the horizon. The luminary bodies that you cannot see in the sky are below the horizon, are considered to be in the underworld. And so a Mercury Inferior Conjunction means that the planet Mercury is conjuncting with another luminary body below the horizon. That's inferior, below the horizon. So right away, we know that this is an underworld event. And whenever we're talking about underworld, we're talking about alchemy, which I love. So which other luminary body is Mercury coming together in the sky with? And it's the sun. The Mercury Inferior Conjunction is the sun and Mercury coming together in the same place in the sky below the horizon, so in that underworld area. And this particular Mercury Inferior Conjunction is the second one that we've had in this 2023 year. Now, unlike other cycles related to, let's say, Venus or to Mars that are very astrological based, Mercury's unique in that its cycles are related to elements. And right now, we're in the Earth elemental year. And that started on January 7th of this year, the day before my birthday, the day before I turned 60. And that particular inferior conjunction took place in Capricorn, the sign of Capricorn, because that's the Earth sign that the sun was in January. And so this elemental Earth year will go all the way through April 10th of next year. And we are having 3 complete cycles this year. Capricorn, this one's in Taurus, the next one will be in Virgo. And then we're starting a 4th cycle that will start actually this year. Well, it will be in the midst of it, but this big Mercury inferior conjunction event will be on the winter solstice this year. So that's just a little bit about this elemental Earth year and these Mercury inferior conjunctions that we're going to be having this year. So let's look a little closer at Mercury. Oops, sorry. My slides are getting ahead of me and I'm trying to move my face so that you can see everything. There's a lot of information on this slide. So the cycle that I'm referring to cryptically on the previous slides, so that I wouldn't give anything away, is the planet Mercury's synodic cycle. And this word synodic simply means Mercury's dance with the sun. So going back to Venus, a Venus synodic cycle is Venus's dance with the sun. A Mars synodic cycle is Mars's dance with the sun. And these cycles are of different durations because some of the planets are faster than others. And also, you should know that, I just lost my thought. What is the other thing you should know? It'll come to me. Okay, so let's focus on the Mercury synodic cycle. Oh, now I know. Also, if you get into this kind of work, you'll find out that the geometry, the sacred geometry that's made as in terms of an image in the sky between the dance of Mercury and the sun is very spectacular, as is the sacred geometry that's made in the sky of Venus and the sun as they make their dance in the sky. Now, coming back to this Mercury synodic cycle, what's really interesting is, first of all, that it's a 40-day cycle. That's a fast cycle. Mercury's a fast-moving luminary body. And it'll pass through 3 repeated degrees over those 40 days. And that'll make more sense when I talk about the different events that are a part of this Mercury synodic cycle. And so, because it is based on an element then Mercury will move through the 3 signs of an element each year. As I said, this is an earth element year. So Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn are the 3 elements. And it just so happens, as I alluded to earlier, that at that winter solstice time, we're going to be having another Mercury inferior conjunction in Capricorn. So this year we're having 2 inferior conjunctions in Capricorn. I think that's pretty significant. What's also important to know is that Mercury cycles through the 4 elements every 6 to 7 years. So the 4 elements are earth, water, air, and fire. Prior to this year, 2023, becoming the earth element, last year we were in an air element. So it cycles through, and depending on which element was on the world stage at the time of your birth, very different from which sign, astrological sign, Mercury was in when you were born. Depending on the element determines when you have your Mercury returned. So if you were born when Mercury was in an earth element year, then the next time that the earth element year shows up every 6 to 7 years, you would be having what's known as a Mercury return. And now what's fascinating is there is a larger cycle, which is a 79-year cycle. And there's a gentleman by the name of Gary P. Caton who has done some really groundbreaking work on the Mercury synodic cycle. He has a fabulous book called Hermetica Triptycha that I highly recommend. And he discovered, by looking at these cycles, this much larger 79-year cycle where Mercury has 12 returns in that 79 years. So from the time that you were born until you reach that age of 79, if you were born during an earth elemental year, you will have 12 Mercury returns in that earth element. And what's fascinating is that Mercury returns to the exact degree of its location at your postnatal conjunction, which is a full circle moment. Now, I'm not going to take the time to explain what a postnatal conjunction is. There are a lot of intricate details related to the Mercury synodic cycle and the great knowledge that can be discerned from the Mercury synodic cycle in terms of, the Mercury inferior conjunction that happened before you were born and the one that happened after you were born. But that's really beyond the scope of what I'm doing here. But it's important to know that there is this full circle moment happening when Mercury does return to that exact spot in the sky right after your birth. And that Gary Caton is the gentleman that discovered that in relationship to the 79-year, much larger cycle. So the next thing I want to explain to you is that in that 40-day Mercury synodic cycle, there are 4 key events. There's what's known as a superior conjunction. So we know that this is the dance with the sun. So superior meaning above the horizon, Mercury and the sun coming together. Then we have a second event in that cycle known as an evening elongation. Here's the one that we're focused on right now because we're having this Mercury inferior conjunction happen on May 1st. It's the third of the 4 key events and you'll notice it's the only one that happens below the horizon. And then you have a morning elongation. The evening one happens in the western evening sky. The morning one happens in the eastern morning sky. Again, a lot more information about that, but I just want to bring your awareness to these 4 key events and the fact that this Mercury Inferior Conjunction that we're having on May 1st is the only event that happens in the underworld, which means that it's the most significant event of the Mercury synodic cycle. And in fact, the timing of when it happens is during the period of time, it's about a 3-week period of time or so, when Mercury is in what's known as a retrograde journey. And this inferior conjunction happens right smack dab in the middle of that Mercury retrograde journey. And the day of the conjunction, the day before the conjunction, and the day after the conjunction, those 3 days are the most alchemical time of the month. Very, very potent time of the month. So what we see here, and again, this is work that was brought to light by Gary Caton. This is the title of the book, Hermetica Triptycha, is that the sacred geometry that's being formed in the sky related to Mercury's dance with the sun is based on the triangle. And Gary says the triangle has always been a universal symbol of stability and harmony. And together, these interlocking triangles, and you'll see there is an upward facing triangle. This upward facing triangle relates to the superior conjunctions with the sun above the horizon, and the downward facing triangle, which relates to the inferior conjunction with the sun. And so you'll notice from point to point, there are opposites. So if have an inferior conjunction point here in an earth element, then across the sky in the superior triangle, I'm having an event in the opposite of earth is water. And so for this particular synodic cycle, we're having a Mercury inferior conjunction in Taurus. Across the sky from Taurus is Scorpio. So the very first event of this current synodic cycle happened with a superior conjunction in Scorpio. So because of these interlocking triangles, he is referring to this in terms of unity, wholeness, and integration between opposites. And that kind of even relates to, if you think about the word opposites, it relates even to an astrological opposition. And we learned about that last month when I was talking about the eclipse that was happening for the first time on the Aries Libra axis. And so they're opposites from each other. This Taurus inferior conjunction that we're having on May 1st is a part of the Taurus Scorpio axis. And what happens in oppositions is that the frequencies of at these polar ends of the axis, they blend together along the axis to create something new. And I always use the analogy of coloring or painting. We learn very early in kindergarten or elementary school that when we blend red with blue, we get purple. If we blend orange and yellow, we get green, I think. Can't remember them all, but the one I remember is red and blue makes purple, okay? So anyhow, that's what's happening. The frequencies are blending together to make a new color, so to speak. But it's not about making a new color that's just another crayon in the crayon box. What it's doing is when it makes this something new, it's making something new up here at this higher point that is of a higher frequency. So if you think of the spiral, right, you're going from a lower frequency and you're spiraling up to a higher frequency. And this is the effect of an opposition. And this is actually the effect of what I call here the star tetrahedron, which, by the way, is one of the building blocks of the flower of life, which happens to be the structure of the quantum field. And even our DNA, if you take a cross section of our DNA strands, you see this image as a part of the flower of life in that cross section of our DNA. So you can begin to discern that something very subtle and powerful is happening within us during this Mercury Inferior Conjunction. Okay, this is the glyph for the luminary body that we call Mercury. And you'll notice that it has three distinct pieces. It has this top piece, which is known as the crescent soul. It has this round piece, which is known as the circle of spirit. And it's got this cross, which is known as the cross of matter. And so Mercury is so mystical in terms of its synodic cycle that even its glyph has this alchemical consciousness built into its image. And I'm going to explain that to you through this quote that Gary Caton has in his book. He says, astronomically, at the inferior conjunction, Mercury is at the point closest to the Earth for the entire synodic cycle, thus accomplishing a linear alignment, which she refers to as an axis mundi, and it's an alignment between Earth, Mercury, and Sun. And he says, as Mercury passes through that space that is between Earth here and the Sun there, Mercury can be seen to take on what he's calling a medial role. A medial role is someone who acts as a mediator. And so he's serving as a bridge between the limited material experience of Earth and the enormous unlimited, or what I would call infinite, potential of the Sun as a star, which is the creative engine of our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. So he's taking that dynamic that's happening in the sky, and now he's going to put it into psycho-spiritual terms. He says, psycho-spiritually, this represents an opportunity for a similar alignment. So the alignment in what we call the as above is also going to happen in the as below here within us. And he says that this similar alignment and this mediation is between the tria prima of self. Now, you may not have heard of this term, tria prima of self. These are alchemical terms, but he further defines them as we continue reading. We can now bring into harmonious alignment and achieve integration, right? That's the blending of those frequencies. When we make something here at this higher frequency, we've achieved the integration of our three selves. That's why it's called tria prima, three parts of the self, so that both the animal instinctual knowledge of the basic self, which is represented by this cross of matter, and the higher wisdom of the spiritual self, which is represented by this crescent of soul, can inform our everyday awareness of the talking self, which is represented by this circle of spirit. And so what happens is the three elements of this glyph, the crescent self, the circle of spirit, the cross of matter, they align with these three tria prima: basic self, talking self, spiritual self. So as that's happening in the sky, that's happening within us below, as above, so below. So Mercury is highly, highly alchemical, extremely potent in those 3 days, the day of, the day before, and the day after of that Mercury inferior conjunction on May 1st are going to be big juju days, right? April 30th, May 1st, May 2nd. All right, so let's look at this Mercury inferior conjunction in terms of the astrological chart. And we see that right here, Mercury has that little R next to it. It's retrograde and it's standing right next to the sun. And it's making a 120-degree angle from Taurus down here to Capricorn to Sarah at 10 degrees of Capricorn. So first, let me remind you of the effect of a trine. And I may have misspoken in my last video when I said it was 9 degrees. 90 degrees is a square. This trine is 120 degrees. A trine in astrology is always an aspect between the same elements. So earth to earth, or fire to fire, water to water, air to air. So the element is a significant part of this. As earth, we're looking to, in Taurus, specifically embodying these frequencies in our physical bodies. And in Capricorn, we're looking at, this wisdom that we have that allows us to be the way showers for our communities. And so in this particular Mercury inferior conjunction to Sarah, this is huge. So first, let me tell you who Sarah represents. What for me in astrology, energetically, she represents. First of all, to know who Sarah is. Sarah is the daughter of the union between Yeshua and Magdalene. So she's a part of that holy family. And as such, energetically, she represents that genetic coding, that genetic lineage that we carry within us that has us coded as Christed beings. This is a huge deal because when the dark forces turned off the last 10 strands of DNA and only kept the first 2 strands of DNA online, humanity fell into darkness. And when they fell into darkness because 10 strands of light codes had been turned off, they were easily manipulated, easily programmed, and controlled. And this is where, the idea that, well, you're a sinner, you're not worthy of the love of God without confessing, and you're so unworthy, you can't speak to God directly. You have to have an intercessor to speak to God on your part. All baloney. It was a part of the dark forces program to disempower humanity so that humanity would not know that they were Christed beings and that they were powerful beyond comprehension. So this trine here is telling us that Sarah and that genetic lineage of us being Christed beings is being embodied by us. And what it's doing is it's transmuting our DNA from being carbon-based DNA to crystalline DNA. This is a huge deal. You know, we're talking about Taurus in terms of embodying. Obviously, we embody our DNA. The fact that the carbon DNA is being transmuted into crystalline DNA is that huge something that's being created at this higher frequency. And with Sarah being in Capricorn, that wisdom that we are in fact divine and human, that we are in fact Christed beings. And so that is what I call with that trine, the path of most allowance to enable this DNA transmutation to take place. And of course, being involved in this Mercury inferior conjunction, a whole new alignment here. And Mercury as the cosmic messenger sending you messages on the most subtle level, letting you know that you are a Christed being and that these strands of DNA are being transmuted. Now, there's another piece to this Mercury inferior conjunction. And what you can see if you look closely here is that that Mercury inferior conjunction point is closely conjunct, meaning closely standing next to a luminary body in the sky known as Salome. And I refer to this as Maria Salome. Now, I've talked about the Trinity of the Sophia consciousness: Mother, Daughter, Holy Soul. Maria Salome represents that Holy Soul aspect of Sophia. And specifically, what that Holy Soul aspect of Sophia consciousness, that divine wisdom is all about, has to do with spiritual community. But this spiritual community, in other words, is known as the New Jerusalem. So, what this conjunction between Maria Salome as the New Jerusalem with this Mercury inferior conjunction, this alignment is all about, again, in Taurus, related to embodiment, is this. Because I asked my guides, what does the New Jerusalem mean? And practically instantaneously, I received, it is the full-on activation of your entire light body. Carbon-based DNA being transmuted into crystalline structure. If you know anything about my Galactic New Earth project, we are actively working to reconnect and regenerate all of those strands of DNA, 3rd through 12th, in our physical vessels that were shut down. We're reconnecting them with the strands of DNA in our divine template that can't be messed with by the dark forces. And so it's kind of like if your battery in your car dies and you call AAA and he comes with the truck and he hooks up the jumper cables from the battery in his truck to the battery in your car, and he gives it a jump, and now all of a sudden all that juice goes into your battery and your battery's up and running again. It's a similar thing that's happening right now. When we go into ceremony through my Galactic New Earth project, we are consciously connecting the strand of DNA in our divine template with that's still online, has always been online for humanity, with the strand of DNA in our physical body that was shut down. That connection gives it that jump. And so the strand of DNA in the divine template is reactivating and bringing that strand of DNA online in your physical body, which means that all of the spiritual gifts that that strand of DNA contains for you are now back online and available to you. This is a huge paradigm shift, and we're seeing how the mechanics of this unfolding for humanity is showing up and being triggered by these cosmic aspects in the sky as a part of the cosmic dance. Now, oops, I got ahead of myself. Let me go back here. Hold on a second. Okay, so that's all of the information I wanted to share with you around that first cosmic event, the Mercury Inferior Conjunction that's happening on May 1st. Now, within that same week, just 4 days later, we are having a full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio. It's happening on May 5th. And you'll notice here it's at 14 degrees Aries, 58 minutes. Oh, sorry, I totally messed that up. Just give me one moment here. Okay, I fixed it for you. I just didn't update this piece here. It is happening at 14 degrees, 58 minutes, but it's happening at Scorpio. So you can see now that if I were to speak to this in passing, I would say it's happening at 15 degrees of Scorpio because I can round this up. Now, last month in April, when I talked about that first eclipse happening on the Aries Libra axis, I said we get eclipses within 2 weeks of each other. And so 2 weeks later, here we are, May 5th, having another eclipse. This eclipse is not on the Aries Libra axis. It's on the Taurus Scorpio axis. And in fact, we've been having for the past couple of years eclipses on the Taurus Scorpio axis. This particular eclipse is the 6th of 7 eclipses that are occurring on this Taurus Scorpio axis. And the 7th and final eclipse on this axis will happen towards the end of October. Remember, I said that these eclipses on the axis have a 6-month window. So 6 months prior to this eclipse, we had the midterm elections in the United States. Now, 6 months out from this event, at the end of October, will be that final eclipse on this axis. So let's talk a little bit about this Taurus Scorpio axis. This Taurus Scorpio axis is known as the path of intensity. And so what it's really referring to is it's referring to the embodiment, right, Taurus, of what is this intense energy, right? Scorpio ruled by Pluto. We're dealing with intense energies. It's talking about the Kundalini energy that sits at the base of your spine. And when it becomes activated, it starts to go up your spine and through the third eye, and you have this awakening of consciousness. So this is what's been transpiring within humanity over these past 2 years. It'll be 2.5 years by the time we get to October. This movement of Kundalini that's been going on. This is why people are having what they are calling near-death experiences, nights of the dark soul, because when that kundalini starts moving within you and breaking you open to other levels of consciousness, it can be extremely dramatic in terms of the physical manifestations of what's happening here. And so, you know, this Kundalini movement that's happening, wow, just 4 days after we have that whole new alignment from the Mercury Inferior Conjunction in Taurus, this event, this eclipse event in Scorpio, 2 events on this pathway within, you know, from the 1st to the 5th, 5 days. Huge. Okay, what you need to know about this eclipse is that it's the full, remember that I said that when you have a full moon, so the full moon eclipse in Scorpio, which means the moon is over here in Scorpio, a full moon means that the sun is all the way on the other side of the sky of that axis. So the sun is in Taurus. That's why the light of the sun can illuminate the moon and make it look full. They're across the sky from each other, and they're across the sky from each other on the same axis. So we've got the sun over here in Taurus, and what it's standing next to, here we go again, Maria Salome. We had that event at the Inferior Conjunction where Mercury and Sun were conjunct Maria Salome, that holy soul aspect of Sophia. And now it's only 4 days later. The sun continues to be closely aligned with Maria Salome in Taurus, fueling this consciousness of the New Jerusalem, the fact that we as humans are becoming the New Jerusalem by these strands of DNA being repaired, regenerated, reactivated, and when they're all brought online, which will be complete in August, then we will have become the New Jerusalem. And in the process of all of that repairing and realigning, the strands of DNA are shifting, transmuting from carbon to crystalline. It's a huge, huge event that's happening for humanity right now. And so, you know, if you think about Mercury as the cosmic messenger, and you think about how humanity is being evolved from being head-centered to being heart-centered, then a wonderful woman that I know of who is the founder of a nonprofit called Heart-Led Humanity posed this fascinating question that I'm going to share with you. As we're becoming more and more heart-centered, and we know how we can communicate with, in my case, it's the English language. If you're in Italy, it's Italian, you know, whatever country you're in, whatever language, spoken language that you use to communicate with, from this carbon-based program is how I'm being guided to call it. Well, now that DNA is being transmuted into crystalline. Think about how crystals were used in radios to broadcast frequencies, right? Probably in the 4th grade, you did a science project on how crystals broadcast frequencies. And so our bodies are going to be communicating in a different kind of a language that won't be so verbal, that won't be tied to the grammar of the written spoken word. And in fact, what Yeshua told me is we think of language as the talking part, but it's not the right word, and there isn't really a right word in this density to translate how we are communicating from this crystalline structure. But what Yeshua told me is that it's kind of like live streaming, like when you live stream a video, right? You're going out over the internet and broadcasting frequencies that are, real time. He says, but it's not live streaming, it's life, LIFE streaming, where you're streaming, even if you want to call them like holographic knowledge to whomever you're desiring to commune with. And it's like an instantaneous knowing. That gnosis comes from Sophia, divine wisdom. So this is huge through this earth element year of Mercury, as the carbon-based DNA is being transmuted into crystalline DNA, that we are going to be learning and experiencing this new communication style of what Yeshua told me is life streaming. Now, this image here, I don't know if you can see, it says Saint Marie Salome here, and it says over here Saint Marie Jacobe. This sculpture is a picture taken in a church in southern France called Église de Sainte Marie de la Mer, and this is the Église. And so the story is, and I encourage you to Google this and find out more of the story. I'm going to just give you an overview. I actually went here in 2019, and it's a powerful place. The story is that when Mary Magdalene had to flee from Egypt, that she and Mother Mary and Maria Salome and Maria Jacobe, along with Mary Magdalene and Yeshua's daughter Sarah, were put into this boat and sent out across the Mediterranean. And they ended up on the southern shores of France at this community, which has been named Sainte Marie de la Mer, the Saint Maries, the Marys of the ocean. Now, you'll see that related to this Sainte Marie de la Mer, there is this symbol right here. It's a cross with a heart and an anchor. And you find this all over the area there. This particular cross is known as La Croix de Camargue. Camargue is the region of France where Sainte Marie de la Mer as a town is located. And so at the top of this Camargue cross, you've got what's known as a trident cross, which represents faith. The heart represents love, and then the anchor represents hope. And so as I'm talking to you about these frequency upgrades that humanity is experiencing through its ascension process, which is really real, right? You could say, oh, it's just woo-woo, but I'm telling you, the people that I'm working with are having physical manifestations of this process show up in their external reality, as am I. Then this idea of faith, hope, and love is one that we can hang on to as we go through this very potent, very transformational process. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the other events happening in the month of May that are related to this Mercury Inferior Conjunction in Taurus and this full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio. So after that eclipse on May 5th, we're going to have the sun and Uranus come together in the sky. We call that a conjunction in these Taurus energies of embodiment. And Uranus is all about radical liberation. It's all about innovative consciousness. It's about taking what we're receiving in the quantum and embodying it within us and manifesting it through us. And so all of these frequencies related to this Mercury inferior conjunction, that alignment that is enabling us to embody and know that we are Christed beings because of that genetic lineage that Sarah is streaming through that path of most allowance to the Mercury or inferior conjunction. This Sun Uranus conjunction is fueling that field of consciousness so that we can continue to have breakthroughs in consciousness in terms of our capacity of what it is that we can embody, embodying more of our multidimensional self, embodying these spiritual gifts of these strands of DNA that are coming online. We just had a ceremony a few days ago in April where we brought the 8th strand of DNA online. As I said, the 12th strand of DNA is coming online by August. So between May, which is the 9th strand, June, which is the 10th strand, July, which is the 11th strand, and August, which is the 12th strand, you know, if you want to engage with that process in a very conscious way, once again, I'm going to refer you back to my Galactic New Earth project, which is free to attend and participate in as a part of the embodiment piece of all of this. So the Sun in Uranus is, you know, really the Sun is fueling the capacity for Uranus to have even greater liberating experiences by expanding our internal space in a way that we can hold more of these higher frequencies and these new fields of consciousness that are coming in. Then on May 12th, Mercury will still be retrograde, still in Taurus, and it's going to have a sextile to Saturnia in Pisces. Saturnia and her journey through Pisces is all about spiritual maturity. And it is time now for humanity to stop being mollycoddled and stop fussing. Oh, I've been so controlled and manipulated and I don't know, you know, what's going on. It's time to put that behind us and step into a maturity, a spiritual maturity where we can consciously engage with these liberating frequencies so that all that happened before us becomes a moot point, because all of this is happening in the eternal now. And, you know, in the eternal now, you are either disempowered or you're empowered. And so what are you going to choose? Are you going to choose to stay disempowered by saying, oh, but they did this to me and oh, they did that to me and how could they have done this and how could they have done that? Forget the narrative. Claim your power in the eternal now and stay solidly grounded in your power. So this Saturnia in Pisces is all about that spiritual maturity, letting go of that narrative. And a sextile is a 60-degree angle that's very harmonious, very friendly, coming in to help you like a best friend would, to hold your hand through the process. What do you need? A glass of water here. You need the fluffy pillow here, you know, to get you through the process. And so Mercury will still be in retrograde, and it's going to be closely conjunct that North Node. And so this sextile, the North Node is the evolutionary GPS for humanity as a collective, for us as individual. And so Mercury is telling you It's time to receive these Saturnia and Pisces energies and start stepping out of the rut that you've been bogged down in and into a firm, solid ground of spiritual maturity. Okay. May 17th, Jupiter will have already moved into Taurus. Remember, Jupiter expands everything and amplifies everything that it comes into contact with. I've said before, it's like striking a match and having that match become a bonfire in terms of the effect of how Jupiter amplifies everything. The other thing about Jupiter, I don't think I've spoken to too much, is wherever Jupiter engages you, if you meet that engagement, when Jupiter moves on his merry way, he leaves you with a boon for doing the work. So, you go to the doctor as a kid, you get your shot, you get your lollipop, that kind of a thing. Now, Jupiter in Taurus is going to be squaring Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. Squares at the 90-degree angles where you have an opportunity to claim a breakthrough in consciousness, or if you shut the door, you will experience a breakdown in consciousness. I mean, think about a water hose. If you bend the water hose and you don't let the water go through, what eventually happens? The hose will split and the water will start squirting out all over. You don't want to experience that. You want to claim those golden opportunities. And of course, this is an opportunity to embody more empowerment. Pluto is all about empowerment from your multidimensional self, that's Aquarius, to become empowered by embodying and working with the quantum field, embodying these higher frequencies of DNA that are being turned on and the spiritual gifts of that DNA that's been turned on. And then on May 18th, 6 days after May 12th, once again, we're having Mercury and Taurus sextile Saturnia in Pisces. But this time, Mercury's not retrograde. Mercury is direct. And Mercury is even a little bit closer in its conjunction to the North Node. These two dates, May 12th and May 18th, you really want to be aware of what's coming up within you, what you're receiving, and what's showing up around you, because this is like a second chance. Like, okay, go in, right? Retrograde is pulling our awareness in, go into that inner realm, tap into where are you standing in spiritual maturity and where are you not, right? Pisces is a water element sign, so all about the emotions, what's coming up where you're not standing in spiritual mastery, and focusing on those feelings, on those sensations, so that they can move through you, so that by the time Mercury moving direct comes back to this sextile in Saturnia and Pisces, you should be able to discern the shift that has taken place within you in terms of where you were before in your spiritual mastery and where you are now in your spiritual mastery. And you may be thinking, but it's 6 days. How can something happen that quickly? It can happen in the blink of an eye. All it takes is the focused awareness. Once you put your attention on something which is in the quantum field, and however you choose to engage with it, then that engagement creates an instant manifestation. And so if you're putting your attention on the inner realm to find out where do I need to step up my spiritual maturity, and you focus and you hold the intention that I'm ready to let that go and claim that spiritual maturity, believe me, in 6 days, you'll be able to discern how far you've come, because it happens like that. Okay, that's all I've got for you for May. It's a big, big month with those two big cosmic events, the Mercury Inferior Conjunction in Taurus on one side of the axis and the full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio on the other side of the axis. And be aware of that Kundalini movement. That Kundalini movement, especially with Jupiter being a fire element, right? It rules Sagittarius, fire, fire, fire. You might even be expanding the pathway within you through which that Kundalini can move. And like I said, you will have physical sensations, physical manifestations of that expression. So have the best month you can possibly imagine having. And thank you for being here with me today. And I look forward to seeing you next month when we take a peek at the June energies as a part of that cosmic dance. So until then, just, know that I'm holding you in a space of love. Goodbye.